Hi, future Christina here. So, at the time I had filmed that video, I had just gotten some brand new microphones that I did not understand how to use. See, these are the types that's supposed to clip down to, like, your chest, preferably, like, your boobie area. And I, the incredibly successful, experienced content creator that I am, was holding them, like, right to my mouth. This is what happens when you're a self-taught content creator who has rarely, if ever, handled microphones before. So if you're wondering why the audio of this video is kind of weird, that's why. Don't worry, future videos will be much better. Thank you for your time, and here are the writing tips.
Well, good morning, lovelies. I don't usually do writing advice videos anymore, which is ironic because I've actually managed to publish a few books since the last time I uploaded a writing advice video, and I know a lot more about the process and publishing industry than back when I was trying to make this a writing channel. However, this week, video editor Nick and I, we realized that there was a gap in our content calendar for this channel. The next CaFae Latte compilation won't be ready until at least March 29th, and there are only so many hot takes and blooper reels we can do before I have to start putting in actual effort. Luckily, you guys came in clutch. I get asked a lot of writing questions whenever I go to conventions or on my videos or even right in my inbox, so I thought that I would put up a community post here on YouTube, as well as ask my patrons over on Patreon, and then answer the most common questions I got. And you guys gave me so many questions. Enough that I'm doing not one, not two, but 3 videos on this. Technically 4. Today's video is all about ideas, motivation, and getting words on the page. Part 2 will be about plotting and pacing, and Part 3 is how to research and write characters from groups that you're not a part of. I also get asked, just for general tips on writing, which that's like asking for general tips on how to build a rocket. But I'll cobble together like my top 10 tips for newbie authors or something like that for the 4th one, whatever. So without further ado, let's answer some writing questions. Obviously, one of the most common questions I get asked, especially from non-writers and beginners, is where do you get your ideas? Sometimes they just come from the abyss. That's where The Witcher Trays with Death came from. I can't trace these origins anywhere. But most of my ideas are directly inspired by other media, and a lot of them actually start out as ideas for fan fiction. Most notably, my Blackwing novella series was originally supposed to be fanfic for Diablo 2, the biggest game of my childhood. The player characters in that game have some characterization, but not a whole lot, which is a phenomenal starting point for an author. So I thought, what if the holier-than-thou paladin and the unholy necromancer had to work together to fight Diablo? Outlining was easy. You just follow the acts of the game and then add character development. I also added the mercenary characters, which had no characterization, so that was a blank slate, and had whole scenes figured out before I realized what an endeavor this was becoming. Like at least 100,000 words, which is the average length for a sci-fi fantasy novel. Citadel, this is 110,000 words. And some of you fanfic writers are writing 200,000 to 300,000 fics. It's just, what the So I thought, well, I can continue this idea as a fan fiction and just upload it to the internet for kicks and giggles, or I can take the original parts that I've created and grow a whole new world and story around them that I can actually publish and monetize, and people might actually read it, which is what I did. I kept the general idea of Lord of Terror and Lord of Hatred as the big bad villains, swapped the standard medieval world for one based on ancient Greece and Rome, and made things a lot more queer because I am me. Citadel got similar treatment. It was basically Warriors fanfic, but with wolves instead of cats, and then I smashed that into an idea inspired by Star Trek, and then world built backwards. We're not in space yet, but we will get there eventually. Different authors have different sources for ideas. Some are inspired by history, which I don't really use for story, plot, or characters, but I do pull from history for world building. Other authors use randomly generated prompts from the internet. CaFae Latte was inspired by a writing prompt from Tumblr. Once you start digging, you find ideas everywhere. How do you decide which ideas to pursue and which to leave behind? This is an interesting one because while some authors struggle to come up with ideas, I have the opposite problem. Tons of ideas that I then have to prioritize or even let go of if I want to get any of them done. Before I was published and, had a fan base, the way I chose which ideas to pursue was largely based on how excited I was for it and how much work had already been done. An idea that I have already created most of the world and some of the characters is going to be a lot more appealing to me than an idea that has this vague aesthetic and maybe a scene or two. These days, business and publishers factor into my decisions. I could have pushed off Heart of Iron for another few years, but because CaFae Latte is popular now, I decided to write it now and publish it this October. It's currently being edited. I will let you know when you can pre-order it. Series like that, as well as Citadel and Blackwing that I've already started, need to be finished before I can start a fourth series. So any story ideas I have that are going to be more than one book, like Accidentally Kidnapped, which is renamed to Kingdom of Starlight, that's not going to happen until 2030 at least. Standalone novels, on the other hand, are great because a lot of writing is a waiting game. Wait for the editor to finish tearing your book apart, wait for the sensitivity readers to tell you everything you got wrong about autism, wait for the publishing date so you can actually make money. For a career author, you want to fill in those waiting times with more projects because, well, it is not yet another series, but you're still creating more content, building your publishing portfolio, getting new fans, etc. So that's how I prioritize ideas. I write all of them down so I don't forget them. I figure out which one is best for my career at the moment, these days usually a standalone. And then from that pool of standalone ideas, I choose the one that I am most excited for, which is usually the one that has already had the most work done. The next standalone novel that I'm going to be doing is basically Bridgerton plus Magic and Murder. I'll be doing that in between working on Citadel sequel and Blackwing Volume 2. How do you turn an idea into a fully fleshed out story? This concept is easier for me because I am a planner. If you don't know, every author falls somewhere on this broad spectrum between planner and pantser. Pantsers fly by the seat of their pants. They literally make the story up as they go along. No prep, no outline, nothing. Planners, on the other hand, outline the story. We usually have character sheets describing the main characters. We typically do world building too, all before ever writing chapter 1. There is obviously a lot of middle ground between the two extremes, but that's the general rule. So for me, I don't go straight from idea to story. I go from idea to word vomit in my notebook or a Word document where I'm just feeling out this idea. No characters have names yet. There's only one or two plot points, some world building, and if I'm very lucky, a theme. Usually themes don't come until the second revision, though. From that word vomit, I then start planning. Usually I create the characters and the world first simultaneously because people are both impacted by and impact the world around them. And while I'm doing that, I get a pretty good idea of exactly what type of story I want to tell. Maybe it's something dark or something funny, something tropey, or maybe something a little more ponderous. Once I've got a pretty solid grasp on the characters and the world that they live in, then I outline. And my outlines are very detailed. I can't give you an exact page count because I use Scrivener, not Word, but I wouldn't be surprised if my average outline is 10 to 20 pages. I'll go into it in the next video. After that, it's time to actually start writing the story. That is how I turn an idea into a fleshed out story. I plan it all out first, and that makes my life so much easier. Most people I know who are intimidated or overwhelmed by the blank page have not tried outlining yet, so maybe give that a go and see if it works. How do you get the motivation to write? Related, what do you do when you get stuck and or deal with writer's block? I'm going to preface this by saying that I am neurotypical. To my knowledge, I am not autistic or ADHD or anything else. And if you're surprised by that because you read Citadel or Nicole is your favorite CaFae Latte character, it's because I'm damn good at Googling. And because of that, many of you watching this video probably are not neurotypical. So my advice is less likely to work for you, and you may want to ask this question to people who share your diagnosis. Having said that, writing has always been an intrinsic part of my soul. I can't remember a single point in my life when I was not creating one story or another. Even as a kid, I would write for fun at least 6 days a week. In fact, when I was in college, I realized that something was very wrong with my mental health when, for the first time in my life, I did not have the motivation to write anything at all. That genuinely scared me, and I got my ass to the counselor's office faster than a lightning strike. Turns out that my birth control pills were giving me depression. I have since switched to an IUD, and I've had no mental health issues since. However, like any other job, if I go too long without a break, I eventually burn out and once again lack the motivation to write. Although it is less, I'm not motivated to do anything except maybe breathe, like what I dealt with in college, and more, I want to write, but there's a brick wall in my brain that I keep running into. And while sometimes I can push past that wall, it usually only comes up when I'm less than a week from being completely fried. So it's better to back off, go on a little hiatus, and I usually end up writing a fluffy fan fiction instead. So I'm still writing, I'm still doing what I love, but with no stakes or stress attached to it. There is definitely a difference between writing for fun and writing because it's a job. There is overlap, but there is still a difference. Burnout is a problem among professional creatives of all stripes, so you have to learn to listen to your mind and body and give them a break when needed. A far more common problem for me is writer's block as it relates to specific projects. For example, Citadel's sequel, Demon's Nest, I have had a bitch of a time writing that. Maybe because it's my first sequel, maybe because it's the first book I'm writing under contract rather than getting the contract after it's already written. But it spent the last year kicking my ass. A lot of times this happens because you get a newer, shinier idea that you want to pursue. Sometimes taking a break from your current project to work on something else does prove helpful. But at some point, you have to stick it out if you want the project to be finished at all. So when that new shiny idea comes, I do my word vomit that I mentioned earlier. I write down all of my thoughts so they're not clouding my brain, and then I put it away and I focus back on the task at hand. Usually, I can kickstart my brain by watching YouTube videos or reading books that are about writing or about specific tropes that I'm utilizing. That usually gets me thinking of, say, the damsel in distress scene in my current novel, or the post-apocalypse that I'm trying to write, or whatever. Seeing other people write and listening to them talk about writing something related to my work will typically motivate me to work on it. Sometimes a change in scenery may be in order. Most of my work is done in this little corner of the apartment. All right. And while I am typically fine with it, I mean, there are a bunch of swords in the corner. Why would I have any problem with it? Sometimes I do need to get out, go to a cafe or library or somewhere I can plug in my laptop and work in a different setting for a little while. I'm usually not as productive there than I am in here, but some productivity is better than none. A new thing that I've realized about myself, I get really excited about new keyboards. So now that I have some disposable income, I typically get a new one about once a year-ish, way more often than I need to, but it always makes me really excited to use to write, and I get the same feeling with like a fancy new pen or notebook. It's clicky. I can't stand the super flat, quiet ones that you get from a MacBook or something like that. No, give me the clicky. Other times, I just tell myself that I only have to write a little bit today, like 100 words. 9 out of 10 times, once I've gone that far, I'm able to go much further, usually enough to finish the chapter, because I just had to get over that first mental hurdle. A lot of writing is about momentum. Getting started is the hardest part, but once you're going, you're going. Find the things that inspire or motivate you, isolate them, and then utilize them as needed whenever you need the boost. How do you come up with names for characters/places? You should not ask me this, ever. I am terrible with names. Like, the names I chose for Citadel make almost no sense. Riley, Olivia, Evelyn, yeah, okay, those are fine. We've set a theme. Augustus, sure. Asaya, stretching it. And Ormus is stolen straight from the jungle shaman in Diablo 2. He has no business being named that. For names in a modern setting, it's easy. You just Google the most common names of whatever country or demographic they're from and take your pick. Husnia is, according to Google, one of the most common Arabic names for baby girls. As for Wraithu, Drek, and the other magical creatures, that was a fantasy name generator. Sorry, not sorry. For fantasy names that you don't want to use a fantasy name generator for, that's trickier. I typically use Google Translate and then I play around with the spelling. The main setting of The Witcher Trades with Death is somewhat based on the Himalayan region of Nepal, at least in terms of like food and clothing and architecture. Everything about the culture and political system here, that's completely made up. So when it came to coming up with the names of the people who live in this region, I translated a bunch of words in Nepali and then I mixed and matched a few letters and sounds until I found something I could work with. Meet Sava's family, the one with the wolf sigil. Bhavamso is literally just Nepali for wolf, and I'm pretty sure I mispronounced that. I am very sorry. The Chimera names from Citadel are English to Turkish, and then I spelled it backwards, and then I played around with the sounds and apostrophes, which is something I should probably do more often because it carries less risk of cultural appropriation. If I spelled the Nepali words backwards before playing around with them, they probably would have been easier to pronounce, at least for my American sensibilities. Yeah, don't ask me how I come up with names and titles. I'm still working on that myself. Those are my answers to your questions concerning story ideas. Next time, I'll be answering your questions about plotting, pacing, and outlining. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you're interested in my books, they're linked in the description of this video. I will see you next week. Bye, lovelies.
Forest deep where shadows creep, Fae wings whisper secrets in the night. A journey starts with a single step, softened footprints under moonlight. Whispered words of ancient prophecy fade in the wind like a melody. She walks the path with courage fierce, through tangled woods she will pierce. She's a daughter of the stars, breaking chains and healing scars. A prophecy in every heartbeat, in her strength fate's true deceit. Dancing with shadows of the moon, her spirit rises with a tune. Every turn a story told, in a world she's fate to hold. Empowered magic in her veins, breaking free from binding chains. Her voice an anthem in the trees, her journey wild and free. She's a daughter of the stars, breaking chains and healing scars. A prophecy in every heartbeat, in her strength fate's true deceit. Breaking chains and healing scars. A prophecy in every heartbeat, in her strength fate's true deceit. In the shadows where the night is young, whispered secrets where the tales begun. Moonlit realms where fantasies rise, eyes that see through crooked skies. Glimmering paths where the willows weep, lost in dreams that we secretly keep. Echoes of laughter turn into sighs, searching for truths in shadowy ties. Oh, the strange sight in the midnight haze, where the fairies dance in their timeless days. Mystery weaves in the silver skies, witness the strange sight uprise. Soft tears fall from the twilight's yawn, winds that mourn for the dreams long gone. The silent winds through the midnight blue, secrets told by the foggy skies. Glimmering paths where the willows weep, lost in dreams that we secretly keep. Echoes of laughter turn into sighs, searching for truths in shadowy ties. Oh, the strange sight in the midnight haze, where the fairies dance in their timeless days. Mystery weaves in the silver skies, witness the strange sight uprise. Oh, the strange sight in the midnight haze, where the fairies dance in their timeless days. Mystery weaves in the silver skies, witness the strange sight uprise. Oh, the strange sight in the midnight haze, where the fairies dance in the timeless maze. Mystery weaves in the silver skies, witness the strange sight uprise.